DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Against the Boards. I'm Chamberlain Bauder here for another week talking lax and hockey in upstate and western New York. Here today we've got a fun interview for you, over 20 minutes with the Knighthawks forward Ryan Smith. For those unaware, Smitty played his college ball at Robert Morris University, was drafted third overall in the NLL draft, the second forward off the board after Jeff Teat, and one of the first offensive selections ever by the new era Rochester Knighthawks, the first piece really of that key offense that they have now. He was right in the shadow of Josh Byrne announcing that he was not going to play in the PLL this summer, and he also got traded to the Six Nations Chiefs in Major Series Lacrosse and has now been playing a summer ball in the MSL. So I got a chance to talk to him about that, but also just overall his lacrosse career getting to this point so that fans can get to know him a little bit more, his connection with Ryan Lanchberry, but really some of the impactful things, and we'll talk about it a little bit more after, is hearing a Canadian talk about the difference of playing in the PLL versus in the MSL over the summer and how life kind of goes for a professional lacrosse player through time. So without further ado, we'll jump right into it and waste no time. Here is Knighthawks forward Ryan Smith. All right, we're here with Knighthawks forward Ryan Smith in the off season right now. Obviously, the Knighthawks year goes the way it does. First round playoff exit once again. We'll talk about that in a minute, but really I want to give this as an opportunity first for our fans of the Knighthawks to kind of get to know you a little bit more. So obviously they know you as the goal scorer that you are for the Knighthawks, but I guess I kind of want to start with how you got there. So we'll take it all the way back. My first question, why lacrosse?
Yeah, so it's actually pretty funny. My dad's side of the family is really big. He has 3 sisters, all who have 2-3 kids, and mostly boys as well. So there's a ton of sports going around in my family when I was growing up. My dad watched my one cousin play t-ball when he was a kid, watched my other cousin play lacrosse, and he pretty much said, I'm not watching t-ball, and signed me up from lacrosse from there. So that was when I was 3 years old. So I've been playing for, how old am I? I guess 25 years almost now.
Awesome. I love that. My dad watched my older brother play t-ball and said, okay, we're not doing this anymore. And that's why I played lacrosse. Yeah, no, it's a completely valid way of going about it.
And it's funny. He was a baseball and hockey player growing up too. So it's just even funnier that he's like, nope, I'm not watching that, and put me into lacrosse.
That is funny that you could have played baseball and then still couldn't watch it. That's a riot. So for you, obviously in Canada, I mean, lacrosse is lacrosse. It's present, it's around. Can you just talk a little bit about what those early opportunities were for you in lacrosse that kind of got you to a point where, you're able to play in the NLL?
Yeah. So I was always a huge lacrosse nerd, so to speak. My one cousin who my dad watched played lacrosse. He played junior A and had a couple pro tryouts as well, but he played junior A in Burlington, which is where I grew up. So ever since I remember, I was watching his games, even when he was playing junior B in Mississauga, kind of following him and always watching him and just watching as much lacrosse as I could. But I was also a very late bloomer. So when I was going through the recruiting process, it was still the days of, 8th graders committing to the blue chip schools, right? So I didn't commit to Robert Morris until after my grade 12 year, so my senior year in high school. So going into high school, I was, not a lot of people believe me, but I was very small. I was 4'10" going into high school. And then I grew 14, 15 inches over the span of high school, put on 100 pounds plus. So obviously my big growth spurt was between grade 11 and 12. I kind of grew 6-7 inches just in the summer. So then it was a lot of getting used to the extra length of my body. So I wasn't very athletic, couldn't move around great, just very uncoordinated. And then I started working with Sean Holmes, who's the Toronto Rock strength coach. Started working with him for about 2 years. And he made a world of difference in my athleticism and putting on muscle and whatnot. But yeah, no, Robert Morris was my only actual Division One offer. Had a couple other D2, D3 offers as well, but it was always my dream to play Division One. And after going to visit Robert Morris, talking with the coaching staff with Drew McMinn, who I still have a great relationship with to this day, it's kind of where I felt most comfortable heading off to college.
Yeah, that's awesome. I have so many questions in my mind that pop up thinking
Mm-hmm.
about that because I completely, yeah, I feel like almost every guy that is over 6 foot at some point in his life hit like 10 inches in a span of
Yeah,
years, kind of a thing. Like that's just something
yeah.
bizarre that happened, but there is so much that you have to, I mean, you probably had to
Mm-hmm.
almost reteach yourself how to shoot with that much different size and what is a good angle, where are my leverages and things like that. But
Exactly.
I kind of want to ask you that, but also lumped in with that playing field versus box, just how much growing up, how much field did you play? And then when it came to college recruiting, how much of that was from your box work that they were recruiting from?
Yeah. So no, it's a great question. So we play field lacrosse all the way up in Canada as well, but it's not actual field lacrosse. It's just box lacrosse on a field, right? Yeah, you have the field lacrosse goalies, you have the same rules, but like I said before, I was a huge lacrosse nerd. So I was always finding ways to watch NCAA games. In Canada, obviously, we don't have ESPN, so it's hard to get a lot of the games. But just watching the way they substitute through the midfield line, and I'm still kind of confused about how they do it, to be honest with you. But that's another reason I chose Robert Morris is because my freshman year, we had almost 20 Canadians on the roster. So it was a lot of box lacrosse foundation that went into it. But yeah, like when I started growing, I played a ton of wall ball, shot a lot. My parents had a little field lacrosse net beside our house. And then I'd put a little tape square up on the wall, brick wall that I chipped a ton, which my dad wasn't too happy with me, I'm sure. But no, it was definitely a huge adjustment. And from box lacrosse as well, like I started playing junior C my first year. So you have 5 years of junior of box lacrosse. So I played junior C for my first year. Next 2 years I played junior B, and then my final 2 years I played junior A. And honestly, most of my recruiting came from field lacrosse tournaments. So I played with Edge Lacrosse, which is a club travel team up here. So I think Robert Morris first saw me either at the All Canada Games in Ontario, or I forget what recruiting tournament it was down in Maryland or Long Island or something like that. But they definitely knew I had the box lacrosse background. But I don't know if they ever actually watched me play box lacrosse before I committed, but it was mostly field lacrosse.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Cool. That's awesome. Someone that you're now reunited with that was around during that time a lot was I mean, there's a lot of guys actually. This is the funny part about the world of lacrosse, right? There's so many like
So small.
relationships, it's so small. But obviously Ryan Lanchberry,
Mhm.
the storylines from the team about you guys being, childhood best friends and everything. Can you just talk about what that relationship was like while you were growing up and I mean how it developed on the field as well in that early.
Mhm. Yeah. So he's a year younger than me. I'm a 97, he's a 98. So we played together every other year growing up because it's 2 year teams in Ontario for box lacrosse. And his dad was always the coach as well. So no, my family moved into the house my parents are in now, which is a 5 minute walk from Lanch's house, where he grew up. And that was when I was in grade seven and he was in grade six. So ever since then, it's been, every day after school, him coming over to my house or me go over to his house, playing mini sticks, playing basketball, just kind of doing whatever. And honestly, as cliche as it sounds, a lot of the stuff comes from mini sticks, just kind of messing around while shooting and doing all of that stuff, right? And ever since then, I feel like we've just had a really good chemistry. And we didn't play together for 3 years in a row until I played junior A again my fourth year because he played junior A all 5 years. But luckily I grew and kind of became more of a physical threat, setting picks and whatnot. So that makes us play really well together. He's one of the best playmakers I've ever played with, if not the best. Just the passes he squeezes into tight windows into me where I don't even have to move my stick, and it's just, oh, I have the ball on top of the crease, I should probably shoot this, right? So no, it's been awesome having him back on the team and being roommates every week and whatnot. It kind of sucked when he was on Georgia and I was on Rochester, not being able to hang out, because if I had a bye week, he was in Georgia. If he had a bye week, I was off somewhere playing as well. So it's kind of a pinch yourself moment sometimes when we score. I score a goal, he assists it, and fans are screaming up and cheering, and it's kind of surreal, kind of having that feeling of my best friend growing up being able to play together professionally.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Again, so many things that I feel like I could ask you off of that. And one of them we'll get to in a little bit, because I definitely want to just talk to you about your style of play between field to box and how that's kind of developed over time. But before I do that, Dan Carey obviously has a big impact on you getting that situation with Ryan Lanchberry being there. And also, I mean, you look at the offense as a whole. When you got drafted, you were the only player you and Curtis Knight were the only two of that, and Turner were the only three of that entire offensive group that was there when you got drafted. So since you've been drafted, Dan has found all of these different pieces. Just one, I guess, how awesome is it to have a general manager that is that active? And two, what has it been like to kind of see this offense come together over time?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I think I look back at the beginning of this year, and Fieldsy might have been the latest draft pick we have on our offense. Like you look at Lance, he was second overall. Waters, he was fifth overall. You'd have to go back in the archives a little bit to find where Nighter was drafted, but Turner was either a late first round pick or early second round pick when it was a smaller league as well. So that's just funny to think about too, that everybody on our offense is a first or second round pick. But yeah, no, it's been super fun kind of gelling with the team the last couple of years. And to your point, it's awesome. Dan Carey kind of knew it wasn't a weakness of our team, but there's ways we can improve, get younger, and do that sort of stuff. So I think that speaks volumes to how he acts as a GM. My college coach always said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same results. So when he sees a weakness in our team or something he could fix, he goes out and does it. So that's awesome, having that kind of belief in the core group that we have now, that not many changes need to be made, if any at all. Just seeing our production over the past couple of years.
Right. Yeah. No, that's awesome. Your position in the sport of lacrosse, you'd think with your body type that you would be all around the crease. I'm, catching and shooting, whatever it may be. But then you see your ability to pass, you see your ability running the point, and then you end up being in a spot, I feel like a lot, as that high righty attackman, where you're almost in a midfield spot and you can run things from that. You can kind of go asymmetrical and run a whole offense, or you can drive to the crease. Just tell me about figuring that out, I guess, for yourself with your growth spurt. What was the figuring out what your game was at that time in your life?
Yeah, no, I think it comes from honestly not being very good when I was growing up and just trying to make a contribution somewhere on the floor. If it's fighting for a loose ball, get into the middle, making a pass, just kind of trying to do anything to stay on the floor. Obviously, now that I found a little bit of success, scoring the ball, making some assists, making plays and whatnot. It's just kind of trying to find your role year in, year out. Obviously, before Lanch came, I was carrying the ball a bit more. I had more assists than goals and still was productive, but I think I'm at my best when I'm doing a little bit of both. Carrying the ball early in possession, trying to attack early, and then, being the off ball guy, getting guys open and getting myself open as well, and just trying to find the windows to get my shots off. But yeah, no, I think it just kind of stems from even when I was at school, my freshman year, I didn't start right away or anything like that, right? It was, okay, like, what do I have to do to get myself on the field? I'm going to work hard in the weight room. I'm going to work hard at practice every day to try to earn my spot. And I think I've always just had that mentality of, and it stems from, like I said, not being great while I was growing up, of having to earn your spot each and every time you go out and play.
Awesome. You've been in an interesting spot now with that as a mindset and a way to go through life. You then end up on these super teams almost that you're on in the summers, and it kind of almost puts you maybe in that kind of spot. So I want to go back to PLL. What was it, 2 years ago now, when you had like the ball for 9 seconds in your stick and you had a hat trick and you had the least number of shots in the entire PLL and you were a top 10 goal scorer? Can you just talk to me about when you were on those types of teams, how important efficiency was for you and what part of your game that became in the pros?
Yeah, 100%. So I think first, like, people always ask me when I played my first PLL game, was like, did you think it was a lot harder than college? And yeah, obviously guys are bigger, faster, stronger, that sort of thing. But when you play with players that are that talented, like Dane Smith, Josh Byrne, and kind of everyone we had on those teams, one, I think you're not getting the top long pole or defensive midi every time. You're getting, number 2 or 3 on the depth chart for a pole or defensive midfielder. And then those guys just draw so much attention. I remember we still joke about it now. It's just, hey, why don't you dodge this possession? It's like, why would I dodge when you're better at dodging than me, right? And then, just them being able to generate slides and just trying to get open. And like I said before, it's my first kind of 2 years in the PLL. It was, okay, I started off as an attackman, now I'm playing offensive midfield, just kind of doing what I can to get on the field and be able to stay in the lineup. But yeah, no, kind of playing with some of those guys, and even now playing with like Lanch and Fieldsy, kind of those top echelon, top talented guys in the NLL. They just draw so much attention to themselves that it's almost, you just have to stand there for a little bit until your defender leaves you and you're open, right? So that's just kind of how I've tried to go about it the last couple of years, is, just let them take all the defenders' attention and just kind of try to pop open and finish my shots when I can.
You bring me to a really interesting philosophical question I want to ask you quick about the PLL. How much do you think that success for offensive players is driven off of, well, one guy is ultimately going to get that shorty matchup each time that he goes out there on the offensive end and everyone's just that good?
Yeah, no, it's kind of what you game plan around, right? Um, the long poles are so good, and on the chaos, they trust their one-on-one long pole matchups on defense, because it's not often those guys get beat, right? And then when they do get beat, you have to score on blaze, which is almost an impossible task. It feels like sometimes. So yeah, I mean, that's where we kind of struggled as a little bit as an offense as well, is okay, when we do get these really good defensive midfielders on the other team, which one of us all having box lacrosse backgrounds is going to straight up beat our defender and draw a slide. So it's a balancing point of, yeah, we want to play box lacrosse out there and, do our thing, play 2-man, 3-man games, whatever the case may be. But at some point, nothing's going to work if you can't draw a slide. And that's kind of the whole goal of field lacrosse, is being able to draw a slide to get the defense rotating. And then you can kind of play your offense off of that.
Right. That makes total sense. Sweet. Thank you for that insight there.
No
So
worries.
this summer, obviously, a change for you. It's kind of an interesting time for everyone. I mean, so you go 2 years ago now, Lyle decides that he's not going to play in the PLL. It seems like I'm not going to play lacrosse decision. And then about 3 weeks later, we see him in a Six Nations jersey. The next summer, Dane makes it very clear he's playing for Six Nations in the summer. Josh came out and talked about his travel anxiety and not wanting to go through that excursion. Yours was kind of silently right along that same week as Josh's. I think your holdout move came about 2 days later. And then the trade gets announced that you're going to Six Nations as well. Can you just talk me through that decision for you? And then, I mean, obviously you're playing on a God squad right now, so I can't blame you.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun so far. Obviously, so many talented players playing for Andy Stats, Lyle Thompson, Josh, Dane again, and many other pieces as well. It's been a lot of fun so far. But for me, it was my last year in the PLL, was a ton of early morning flights on Fridays, where I'd have to take off work or work on the plane. And when during the summer, after you're gone all winters, you kind of want to have your weekends back. Be able to go to the cottage during the summers or just hang out with your buddies you haven't seen in a while, go play some rounds of golf on the weekends and spend time with your family, right? So kind of how my year looked before was obviously I work all year. I work for Whirlpool. I sell appliances. And then from Halloween weekend until middle of May, end of May, you're gone almost every weekend for the NLL. So then after that ends, you get about 2 weeks off, and then you go to training camp in Albany for 8, 9 days, whatever the case may be. And then you have 10, 11 weeks in a row almost where you're on a plane traveling for the PLL. And then you get about a month or two off before NLL ramps back up again. So it's a lot of lacrosse, and I think the flying takes a toll on your body as well. Albany was the only weekend I could drive to for the PLL, and then everything else was a flight. So it just kind of started taking a toll on me mentally. Just wanted, to be at home, hanging out with my buddies, playing golf, seeing my family. All those things are very important to me. And then also just how busy I was with work as well. It's tough trying to work on a plane every single Friday, or you get to the hotel and you have to work, go to practice, come back, work some more. And now the ILA, Iroquois Lacrosse Arena, is 20 minutes from my house. So 9 of the 18 games, I get to drive 20 minutes, and I'm there for the game. We play Tuesday nights. I'm home by 10:30 in bed, ready to go to bed, right? And then majority of the other games against Brampton, Oakville are 40-minute drives for me. Obviously, Peterborough, Owen Sound, Cobourg a little bit farther, but nothing's more than a 2.5-hour drive for us. So I think just a combination of all those things together made me want to stay home and have my weekends back. That's honestly mostly what it comes down to, is being able to hang out with my friends, family, and doing all of that sort of stuff that I didn't get the opportunity really to do for 2-3 years before that.
That makes total sense. That makes total sense. I mean, playing on Tuesdays versus playing on Fridays and Saturdays
Exactly.
is a completely
Exactly.
different
And with the PLL, it seems like there's a lot more Friday games now as well.
Yeah.
So then you're on a plane Thursday. So either you take Thursday and Friday off, or you try to make something work while working remotely Thursday and Friday. So like I don't even know if I have enough vacation days to play in the PLL and NLL. But then just with the travel and whatnot, like I said, it just makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. Well, and then you also look at guys. I mean, I feel like I can run through a gambit of a list right now between the Archers and the Chaos ultimately. I mean, Tom Schreiber, Brett Dobson this year now, Latrell Harris a couple of years ago, Burnsy and Daner during their time over the last couple of years. When you play lacrosse and you don't stop, you just pick up these injuries. And then in the sport of lacrosse, you try to play hurt, and then it progresses even more and more. I mean, yeah, it becomes this just kind of the nag that is a 2-year nag on your knee or something, and you've just never actually thought about it because you didn't stop playing for more than 2 weeks, right?
Exactly, and that was the nice part about last summer, is I had off-season surgery, so I didn't play at all until Worlds. So just having basically the whole summer off just to rehab, heal up my body was a huge advantage for me, I feel like. Just to kind of rest up, like you said, I've been playing for, at that point, you go to school, you play all year, from when you get there in August until when you go home in May. Then you play box lacrosse from May until the week before you go back to school. So it was 5 years of that, and then 3 more years of PLL and NLL. So it was almost 8 years straight of playing lacrosse, having no time off. And that's kind of how it goes nowadays. But like I said before, I'm a huge lacrosse nerd. I love lacrosse, and I've always told myself I'm going to be done playing the day I don't have fun anymore. And that's kind of what happened in the PLL my last summer, just with all the travel and trying to balance that and work and all that stuff.
That makes sense. You talk about being, I'll call you a lax rat. I'll just take it and
Yeah.
throw it out there. So with this team that you're on now, this is kind of my last area to ask you about. How cool is it being a lax rat on this Six Nations squad? I mean, even just JT being your coach, like obviously Hazen is amazing and an all-time great in the NLL, but JT as a player is the GOAT of the NLL. Like, I mean, and now he's on above you on the bench, and you've got every other guy that you could probably argue is a GOAT of the NLL is out there on the field. Just what is this experience like?
Yeah, it's been awesome so far. There's just so much talent in that locker room. Remember my first day just going around and meeting everyone that I haven't met before and whatnot. And obviously Buffalo was still playing, so they weren't there. But never met Lyle before, never met Randy and Cody Jameson and all of those guys, right? So even just looking at our goalies, like Dougie Jameson, Warren Hill, like it's pretty lethal 1-2 punch, right? Especially in senior when it's one, you have the goalies have wooden sticks, and two, it's smaller nets than the NLL, right? So kind of those two combined makes it a lot harder to score. And when you have two great NLL goalies like that as well, it makes it easier for your defense to play. But yeah, no, it's been a surreal experience so far. And like I said, being able to play with Lyle and Randy and Cody, obviously playing a little bit with Dane and Josh beforehand. It's been an awesome experience so far.
Awesome. That's all I got for you, Ryan. Thanks so much. I appreciate the time.
Yeah. No worries at all. Thanks for having me.
That was Ryan Smith talking everything from growing up playing lacrosse in Canada and why I played lacrosse to talking about that PLL decision. I want to talk a little bit more about a couple of phrases out of that PLL decision that really piqued my interest while he was talking. I mean, there was plenty of things. I felt like I had follow-up after follow-up for him while talking throughout that. He's really good with his words. I mean, he's always been very well-spoken in interviews for post-game stuff. It was nice to get him in more of a longer form interview to just be able to really get those more long-winded answers out of him versus knowing how to get that coach speak out, which he does often do in press conference situations. But overall, talking about a couple of statements from that PLL conversation. The first one from that last quote that he said about it, which is the moment that he decides he's going to retire is when he doesn't love playing anymore, and that he didn't feel like he loved playing with that travel. That's definitely something to think about, that, we can make jokes or make light of different, types of frustration out of traveling. But at the end of the day, if that much travel hinders your enjoyment of the sport, then why are you doing it when you work a different job full time? Which then also harps back to the conversation about getting our players paid enough money that they can just play lacrosse, which is a whole other thing that's really hard with the way that the NLL season is structured, with how long it goes on, but how few games you actually play, how much money you could actually make off of that. It's a whole other conversation. But at the end of the day, the other thing that he talked about that was really key to me is that, especially this season where the PLL is playing Friday, Saturday, every single weekend, you're working remotely on Thursday, then having to take a vacation day on Friday, or trying to work remotely on a day that you literally have a game that night. It's hard to do. Like, it almost just doesn't make sense to do in certain circumstances. So when you can just go play on a Tuesday 20 minutes away from your house, it just makes so much sense. And when you have a team that's that good and that competitive that you can play for, and you're playing for something that you've grown up wanting to win in the Mann Cup. So at the end of the day, why wouldn't you go for that opportunity? I completely understand it. Now, some of these younger Canadians just got their visas approved and are coming over to play in their PLL lacrosse, and got to give them credit where it's due. This is the opportunity that they have right now out of playing college lacrosse, and this is where they're headed. And one of the headlines of that, I mean, they're all kind of headlines because they all play for Syracuse, but the key player for that is Michael Grace, the former RIT product, then played his extra year of eligibility at Syracuse, and now is going to be joining the New York Atlas. Now, the Atlas just had to move on from a couple guys into the player pool to get him onto their 25-man roster, but I do think that with the moves that they make, it made sense for him to now slide in as an LSM. The other thing is, based on the injury report from this week, there are a couple polls for New York that are questionable to play this week, including Gavin Adler and Brett Makar. So there's a chance that we actually see Michael Grace as early as this weekend in the Atlas games, in the Atlas game in Philadelphia this weekend. I mean, they would play the Whip Snakes at 1:00 on Saturday. So if Coach Pressler wants to be cautious with any of those polls that they've got, or really just see what they've got out of Grace, it would be a great opportunity to run him if they have to run Tyler Carpenter as a close defender that week. But yeah, that's the opportunity for Michael Grace. Along with him, Sam English and Owen Hiltz both find their ways to the Redwoods and Chaos, respectively. Owen Hiltz will have his first week in the PLL off, as the Chaos have the bye this week. But Sam English will be, with the California Redwoods now for that opportunity to start the former Syracuse captain. Also in the PLL, of course, something that we didn't really, I feel like, talk about enough last week, but we got to talk about the California Redwoods just as a whole, as a team right now. They're 2-0 at the moment, but their specialists, and by specialists, I mean their face-off specialist and their goalie, are the Erlin brothers from Victor. TD is taking the face-offs for the Redwoods this season, and Chase has now played 2 games in goal, and they have gone 2-0. And now the conversation about the Redwoods has to be had. Have they played the worst 2 teams in the PLL so far? I think there's a high possibility of that, but they get to test that out this week against the back-to-back defending champs in the Archers. And at the end of the day, I think this is a slightly wounded Archers team that if the Redwoods are the real deal, they should be able to win. It's going to be a good game, I think. But if this Archers team, or if this Redwoods team, rather, is the real deal, they should be able to win this game. And ultimately, if the Archers pull it out handedly, then I think we kind of know a little bit more about where this Redwoods team really is. But at the end of the day, I think we kind of saw some writing on the wall with the way that the Outlaws have been now over the last 2 weeks. And the only win that the Chaos have so far is against the Outlaws. So I'm not trying to call out anything early right now, but we'll talk about a little bit more stuff in a second here. But at the end of the day, right now, this is a great test for the Redwoods. I don't feel like we should make any decisions on how they are until 8:30 on Friday night rolls around and we see how they match up. Obviously, Chris Kavanaugh is still going to be a stud and get his. Ryder Garnsey is going to be a stud and get his, probably against anybody. I think the real test will be Chase Erlin against that good of an offense. And it'll also be just that entire system against a championship team. So we'll see how those two things shape up. But Victor riding strong in that squad at the faceoff dot and in between the pipes. The last PLL area that we have to talk about today, and pretty short in my talking today because we had that long interview right there. But last thing for PLL that we have to talk about, we brought it up lightly last week. Of course, the Rochester Rattlers become the Dallas Rattlers, then become the PLL Chrome, then now become the Denver Outlaws. Still coached throughout that whole time and general managed by Tim Sudan. The Outlaws are in a predicament at this point, to say the very least. They just have not found the shooting stroke on offense whatsoever, and it makes zero sense that they haven't been able to, because now they have 4 Tourton winners on their team. Now, you can make an easy assumption with that, a really, really easy assumption. And when I was on podcast last year, I said the Outlaws shouldn't draft Brennan O'Neill. They should draft Schellenberger, because the one thing that this offense doesn't have that they need is a feeder. And it's the only way that it works, because right now everyone's just one-on-one dodging, trying to get to the rack. And when you play in the PLL, where all of these defenders are built to just take a one-on-one matchup, it just doesn't work. And that's kind of what we've been seeing so far out of this Outlaws squad, is that they have not had that production because they're just trying to get to the rack. And given Brennan O'Neill is amazing and he's going to be able to get to the rack a lot of the time, but at the end of the day, when your team is putting up 9 in week 1, and I mean 12 isn't bad. That's the other thing too. I think people are assuming because of the Champ Series that the PLL should be a high-scoring game. Lacrosse, in its purest form, can be 18-17, and it can be 8-7. And that is just how it goes. But also, when you have, 4 guys who each at one point in time were the best offensive player in all of college lacrosse, and all of those guys did that after COVID, by the way, there's no excuse. Just push comes to shove, there's no excuse for that offense not producing. Now, they add something back into the fold this week with the move of Sam Handley. Eric Law comes back into this offense, and I have to say, I think he could be the key that unlocks it. There's a high possibility that him being the ex-attackman for that team completely changes the game for them because he adds that eye for everything from around the crease. Whether that's quarterbacking off ball or on ball, he can 100% be that guy for this team. Now, with that, you get some pretty unorthodox situations, but in the world of the PLL, it honestly screams almost cheat code to me. Why this team isn't running 2 of those attackmen out of the box every single time, I do not know. Brennan O'Neill and Jared Bernhardt should both be coming out of the box every single time. Now, Jared Bernhardt we saw last week maybe coming from behind the cage a lot for his creation, so maybe it makes a little bit more sense for him to become an attackman. But at the end of the day, if you want Eric Law out there and you want Pat Cavanaugh out there, your righty attackman spots are filled, period. End of story. So Jared's got to come out of the box. He can still invert to X. I mean, every team sends middies down to X for an invert play, so it's not a problem. Jared Bernhardt is your right wing midi. Brennan O'Neill is your left wing midi. Logan Wisnowskis is your lefty attackman. And now you have one spot in that midfield that you cycle between Graham Bundy, Justin Anderson, and really just, I would say just those 2, and then whoever else you want to kind of cycle into that. Van Overbeek can shovel in there every once in a while. Any attackman that you want to get into the lineup that doesn't get enough minutes in your mind, you can slide into that spot. But that is a literal cheat code to me. You put Jared Bernhardt on one wing. You've got Brennan O'Neill on another wing. You have on 4 corners of the field, you have the guys that are going to get the pulls. Now Eric Law, who's running your offense, gets a shorty. And the second that they realize he's running the offense, they'll switch a pull onto Eric Law, theoretically. Now, if they don't switch the pull onto Eric Law, he can just cut you up and dissect the offense, or the group theoretically should be able to cut up and dissect the offense because the quarterback of the whole thing has a short stick on him, which means that you can work mismatches, you can work a pick game, you can work slides and mismatches off of that, or the defense will realize he's the quarterback, put a pull on him, and then all you have to do is figure out which two-or-ton winner has a short stick matchup and get the ball to him. There's almost zero reason that this offense should not work. But over the last 2 weeks, they've gone 0-2. Now, in this last week, they faced the best goalie performance that the PLL has ever seen. From, of course, an amazing goalie and an upstate guy in Blaze Reardon. Now, with that said, that offense was completely disjointed. It was not just Blaze making saves. Blaze added insult to injury by making all of the saves that he did, but at the end of the day, that offense could have created higher chance looks more times. Now, do I think with another week with a lacrosse stick in his hand, Jared Bernhardt will probably finally find the back of the net? Yes. I picked him in my fantasy team this week. I really hope he finds the back of the net. But at the end of the day, it was just, clearly something had to change. They made that change. Eric Law is now in the squad. The key thing, though, will be he should start at attack for this team next week. When they roll into Philadelphia on Saturday Night Lacrosse for this beautifully graphic matchup with Michael Sowers and Bill Tierney and company from the Philadelphia Water Dogs in a game where actually right now, the spread for Denver is favored. The Denver covering the spread is the favored bet right now. Easiest bet of my life was taking plus odds on the cover from the Water Dogs. Oh my. Like 1.5 goals to cover that against the way that the Outlaws have been playing this year. We have no idea who's going to be in goal for the Outlaws this week. It'll be Logan McNaney's first ever start in the PLL if he does get the start, or it's Owen McElroy, who, I'm going to be completely honest, by the fourth quarter of that game last week, sure, have the conversation that Logan McNaney should go in for Owen McElroy. But having that conversation in the second quarter when the team was literally winning is the most idiotic and rude thing I have ever heard in my life. And if you watched any of the broadcasts from the PLL last weekend, you know what I'm talking about. That broadcast team was literally just they took Owen McElroy out into the middle of the road and tried to run him over with a bus on the broadcast. I mean, there's nothing else that you can say about him. He was under the bus they might have strapped him to it to drive to Charlotte last weekend. Jeez Louise. It was absurd. Like, yes, the guy had one save in the first half. Every shot Carolina took was on the crease. It was just complete unawareness and trying to force a storyline that Logan McNaney should be starting. And it was just plain offensive. Like, there's another guy in the cage, everyone, and he's not in his first rodeo. He might not be the answer. And I'm not, trust me, I'm a Logan McNaney stan. You guys heard me on the podcast for the last month. I mean, he was one of the reasons that we were at Gillette. He 100% deserves to end up being the starter for the Denver Outlaws. However, Liam Entenmann sat behind Tim Troutner for how long? I don't care that they were winning. How long did he sit? And he never complained because he said, I have to learn this defense. I have to learn the cues, everything like that. Now, McNaney coming in with a Bernhardt defense, not a hard thing to do. It's not going to be a hard thing to do. But still, PLL shots are different, guys. Like, I don't know what anybody expects at the end of the day. It is a different game, and he will probably be amazing when he comes in. I don't doubt that in any stretch. But at the end of the day, the fact that we're sitting there when a guy is winning a game and saying they should change their goalie is idiotic. Completely idiotic. Now, with that said, high possibility that we see, if we don't see Logan McNaney start this game, I think we will see him eventually get put into this game. But it's gonna be a fun one at 7 p.m. on Saturday for that Saturday night lacrosse. Michael Sowers looked sick. And I think the other thing too that's awesome about the Water Dogs, obviously Thomas McConvey scores a hat trick last weekend, the Rochester Knighthawk. Another great pickup in fantasy this week, only 17 tokens for either game. For a cap hit on that, if you were to pick him, I have him against the Outlaws right now on my board. But ultimately, Bill Tierney running a system for this offense is the coolest thing ever because he said, Michael Sowers, you're my feeder. Go initiate from X and dish. And he had 7 assists. And I think he's going to average at least 5 every single game. And if he does, it will be sick lacrosse. I love feeder-based lacrosse. I just think it's so awesome. And that's what Bill Tierney looks like he chefed up down there. And one might have thought that it would be Kieran McArdle that would do that. But at the end of the day, Michael Sowers is so fast that he can just draw a slide every time. And when you've got a guy like Jake Taylor that's on the crease and a guy like Kieran McArdle that can still operate in that low, you can almost put 2 guys at X. It just makes total sense. He gets the slide, dish, score, boom, done. I have no idea where CJ Kirsch goes in this team at all. It's going to be a fun experiment to see where he does end up on this team. But that's going to do it for the PLL conversation. Of course, they're in Philly this weekend. So that first game of the weekend, the Boston Cannons, of course, as we've said before, Graydon Hogg on that squad, for the Rochester Knighthawks. He's really the main connection. Water Dogs, McConvey, and Rylan Reese. California Redwoods have both of the Erlin brothers on that squad, and then the Utah Archers have, of course, Connor Fields on the offensive end of things, and Brett Dobson, a St. Bonaventure alum, on the defensive end in goal. He's also currently questionable this week with an ankle injury, so who knows? Could be a Dylan Renner game out of Adelphi. That would be fun. That would be interesting to see. New York Atlas, of course, the New York Atlas with Jeff Teat, Connor Schellenberger, Liam Entman in the cage for that group. Who knows? Maybe we'll see Hugh Kelleher eventually for this squad. But, of course, as we said earlier, Michael Grace officially on that 25-man roster. For the Maryland Whip Snakes, really just Rob Pennell on that group that we're paying attention to with where he ends up after this season on the all-time PLL assists record. And then, as we were talking about there, Outlaws and Water Dogs will finish off the night. Now, Saturday, though, aside from those professional games, is going to be a massive game right here in Geneva, as it will be the host site for every Class D through A boys lacrosse final for the state of New York. And in every single class final, there is a team from upstate New York playing in that game. So over the weekend, or not over the weekend, yesterday, all of the games in the semifinal round got played out. Maine Endwell fell big time to Somers by 27-6. Chenango Forks pulled out maybe the most bizarre scoreline I've seen so far from a high school game with a shot clock. 5-4 win over Cold Spring Harbor. Just crazy for Section 4 to pull out the win there over the Section 8 squad. Shutting down Long Island. We love to see it. Half Hollow Hills, 10-point win over Corning Painted Post. So there goes another Section 4 team. And then in Class B on that side of the bracket, Vestal got beat by Warwick last weekend. Tough game. Crowley's balled out, though, ultimately. And so no one on that side of the bracket from upstate. But on the flip side of the bracket, Canandaigua rolling into that championship with a 6-goal win over CBA in Syracuse. So Canandaigua will match up with Garden City in that Class B final. Meanwhile, West Jenny pulled out the 10-point win over Penfield, so they will take on Half Hollow Hills. It was Penn Yan with a 7-goal win over Ogdensburg Free Academy, so Penn Yan, Chenango Forks, also great. I mean, that might be my favorite matchup that's going to come up as these stack up. And then Jamesville DeWitt will be the ones to take on Somers in that last matchup, hoping that trip they took down to Long Island earlier this season can pay off for them. But those games start at 10 a.m., run all the way through 5:30. It's JD at that first game. The 12:30 game is that epic, in my mind, the most epic one. Section 5 versus Section 4 for the Class D final, Penn Yan and Chenango Forks. Then West Jenny at 3 and 5:30 is Canandaigua trying to take down Garden City. Garden City trying to get their 7th state championship since 2000, which is just, I mean, that's as close to a dynasty as you can really get in terms of that. I will have a whole lot, hopefully, video-wise for you from that next week. Also, though, next week's episode potentially going to be coming at a later time, but we will keep you posted on that as we have more. Things might be perfectly on time, actually, and you might just get to see a fun little movie from the weekend of the state tournament. So we can only hope for that. But thanks to my producer, Paul Russo, I've been Chamberlain Bauder. That's going to do it for us this week on Against the Boards. We'll see you next time.